Now I'm going to go to Kurt Holler. Kurt's the Director of Business Creation at EIT Health. Kurt, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. And congratulations to all the awardees. And thanks for everyone hosting that event. Special thanks, of course, to Victor, who initiated all of that. Yeah, let me say a few words about me personally before I get started. I'm an engineer by training. I did my PhD in computer science, focusing on imaging, and did part of that at Johns Hopkins University, but of course also in Europe, in Munich and at the University of Erlangen. And I was a founding director of a Central Institute of Biomedical Engineering, where I created basically my own bachelor and master course for students in that area. And out of that academic field, then I moved into EIT Health. Next slide, please. Just a few words about EIT Health. What is it? It's a European institution, and that institution is meant to initiate and to foster innovation through entrepreneurship in health. And it's like totally open, but most of the topics in health actually somehow correlate with longevity. So therefore, I think there's a very good fit of most of our programs also to all of you here in the virtual room. So next slide, please. If we look a bit into what's the DNA of the organization, you can see that we support companies all over Europe. So we do not have a real focus on companies outside Europe, but I will come to that in a few minutes. There's also opportunities for them. We mainly focus on startups in Europe because it's a European taxpayer money and funding used to finance our institute with 1 billion euro in total. What you can see here is that we also use that money to actually facilitate investments. Last year was exceptionally successful also for our EIT Health companies. More than 1,000 companies in our portfolio were able to raise roughly 850 million euro. And even this year in the pandemic and post-pandemic crisis that we are facing now globally, also economic crisis now, geopolitical crisis, we see that the companies still are fundraising. Hopefully that doesn't get stopped fully. Next slide, please. So how does EIT Health, how does our organization now support all these companies? So if you look into those topics, it's about supporting companies tapping into new markets. That's crucial. You cannot just stay in your own market. It's a bit different for companies in the US because the market is just so huge. Companies in Europe, so imagine you're a company in Belgium, you just have to think at least international and European. Ideally, every company should think global from the beginning. Access to finance. If you have your perfect business model, if you have planned it out at some point of time, you really have to think about financing, and it's better to think early about financing and providing a proper business plan and not too late. Connecting with experts, that's something that you should have done already at the very beginning, but you never should stop that. So even if you think you're the global superhero and you have like solved everything, you still will need expertise and support. So never think that you have all the expertise already inside. You always will need others to discuss that with. And also learning new skills. We even have serial entrepreneurs who have already created a couple of companies and have raised huge amounts. Even they need to get upskilled in some areas. Next slide, please. So one of the programs that might be specifically, so I'm not able to present all the programs that we offer, but one of them, I will present just a few. One of them that might be specifically interesting for you is our wildcard program. Next slide, please. Our wildcard program is challenge-based. So we set a challenge, and in the next year, in the upcoming year, that challenge will be children's health. And longevity starts at children's age. In that challenge, we will invite individuals from all over the world to contribute to that challenge with their ideas. And then we will create teams. And with these teams, we will train them to set up their business plan, to create their business model. It's also possible to join already as a startup, but the startup must not be older than 1 year, 12 months. And throughout the business plan fine-tuning, we also do a selection. And the selection goes further and further. In the end, there is just 2 companies left, and these 2 companies will get 1.5 million euro from EIT Health in order to start that business and implement that company. Quite some successful companies have already spun out of this program, as you can see here. Next slide, please. Another very important factor for every startup that is already initiated and created is visibility. And EIT Health is in the healthcare sector, the organization that can provide the highest visibility within our partnership. And our partnership spans across all the 280 most important players in that field. The big companies, Siemens, Philips, also GE as a global company with their footprint in Europe, Roche, Sanofi, many others, also the top universities in Europe with their university hospitals. Next slide, please. So what's the secret behind that catapult? Basically, we invite companies from in all the regions and countries to pitch, and then we select the best one per country, and they take the next step up to a semi-final. At the semi-final, we put them together with investors that already get interested in those companies. And then next slide, please. These companies come to the finals, and that's the finalists from last year. From this year, sorry, great companies that then get a lot of visibility. And on the next slide, you will see that they don't get only visibility in Europe, but also at the New York Times Square, at the Nasdaq Tower. We were able to position their logos as the winner of this European competition, because it's our approach and our goal to make them visible also on a global level. Next slide, please. Another program is Bridget. Bridget is a program that helps you to enter new markets. So imagine you already have your product ready. Then you still have to be able to get into other markets. As a small European company, it might be very important to go to the US. But as a US company, at some point of time, you also might want to expand to Europe. And we have a solution for both. Next slide, please. On the next slide, you can see that we have catalyzers, that's how we call them, clusters, accelerators, incubators, that are super familiar with their own home market. So they know how the reimbursement works, how the regulatory works, how the clinics do their selection of technology, how they collaborate with others. So all of that, how the investors work, how the government programs, the funding programs work. So that's what the catalyzers do. And they can bring companies from Europe to other countries, to other global markets, but also global companies into the European market. It works vice versa. The only difference is for the European companies, we as EIT Health also provide 40 to 50,000 euro per company. For the global companies, of course, we can't use the taxpayers' money from Europe. So their governments have to pay, or the company can also pay themselves. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we're also talking about investments and financing. So once all the non-dilutive grants are already consumed and used, at some point of time, real growth needs a proper investment strategy, and that's something where we can help. We can help at a very early stage. We have one program that's called GoCheck, a team actually located in Cambridge, Boston, at the Canal Square. They help companies that have a massive growth potential but still need to pivot a bit. They help them through linking them to global key opinion leaders to really select the right assumption and build their business plan on the right assumptions. Maybe also challenge their technology in some cases and make sure that they are 100% investor ready. And then we link them to investors in Europe, but also in the US. Another program, and there, next slide, please. Another program is the Venture Center of Excellence. That's a collaboration program with the European Investment Fund. The European Investment Fund, for the non-Europeans here, is a European institution that's basically co-invested in almost all the big VCs that we have in Europe. And together with them, we have identified that it would be good if we also would trigger more corporate investments, strategic investments, not just the private ones, but also the corporate ones. And through that model, we have leveraged 2 billion euro that we now, together with EIF, can invest and lead into investments in healthcare companies in Europe. Next slide, please. Now I'm almost finished. The final collaboration that I also wanted to briefly introduce and present is the collaboration between the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, EIT, and the European Innovation Council, EIC. EIC are the guys that provide funding as well, whereas EIT Health is, we are focusing more on facilitation and establishing connections, providing knowledge, very specifically in the healthcare domain. EIC is just a funding institution that provides funding to startups all over Europe, but not very sector specific. And therefore, that collaboration makes a lot of sense. EIT Health brings in the domain expertise, and EIC provides just the funding up to 15 million euro in a blended financing approach. And in order to make that collaboration also visible, we have created a fast track from EIT Health to EIC. So very good, or the best EIT Health companies can also get a fast track into the EIC funding with up to 15 million. That's it. Last slide, I think, is my conclusion slide with my contact data, but very much looking forward to the discussion. Thanks. And Bob, back to you.
Thank you, Kurt. One question for you. How do companies pay back EIT? Are you a long-term investor? Do you have certain rights in subsequent financings to put in more money, or what is your, how do you generate returns for yourself and value for yourself?
That's a very good question, because the first 5 years we didn't even think about. We just gave away our money and invested with no strings attached. And at some point of time, we realized that also commission money is ending and not endless. And since a couple of years, we ask in some programs for something in return. We never take direct equity. In some cases, like the wildcard, we call it virtual options. So it's like a very hypothetical thing, but in the end, in case of an exit, we also benefit financially in that, depending on the money that we have invested up front. In other programs, we also take little percentages, like in GoldTrack, we take 0.95% in case of a financial event. And still in many other activities, like the business plan competition, the catapult, we don't take anything. So there's nothing that we request from the companies. But still, we have a significant prize money of 240,000 euro in total that we award to the companies that we select there.
Cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing that.